Welcome to Turks and Jerks, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz, Lindsey McCormick, Jason Rubin. We've already posted our Turks of the Week.
Yes, we have.
So now the Jerks of the Week. Jason, once again, we'll begin with you.
Well, there's definitely a few that need to go out there.
Sure.
I think that instead of just Jerks of the Week, Week 10 is considered the Jay Cutlers of the Week. So before we get...
I got it. He didn't give up 55 points.
No, I know.
No.
Yeah.
But, okay, so the Bears of the Week.
2 weeks in a row to give up 50 plus
Yeah, the Bears
points.
defense is a whole another issue in itself, but maybe we'll save that for Week 11's Jerk segment. A few honorable mentions. One, Michael Schor has let me know that we cannot, because it's a bye week for the Pigskins, that doesn't mean Dan Snyder gets a bye from being the overlying jerk of the year.
Right, he's always the jerk.
He's always the jerk. And Dan, our executive producer, has also mentioned Andy Dalton and his horrific 10 for 33 performance, 3 interceptions way back on Thursday Night Football. So those are 2 honorable mentions.
Square yourself up to the camera, young man. Be proud. Be aggressive. That camera.
I'm
right
comfortable.
there.
This is like a fireside chat.
Yeah. There we go. Lean in. There we go. Lean in like MSNBC. So a great call on Dan Snyder, but who is your actual jerk of the week?
My actual jerk of the week is the New York Football Giants. In general, it's the New York sports market, because when the New York sports market has to rely on the New York Jets to win a game for New York sports pride, I don't know the last time the Giants haven't won. They've lost 4 straight since going 3-2. And besides Odell Beckham Jr., there is nothing working on that team.
Yeah,
and
that guy's
very frustrating.
That guy's a good player.
He is very good.
Now the Giants have 3 when the Jets have 2. It's like the battle has been joined in New York. All right, so the Giants, fair enough, although they were looking good in that game for some time. And then from the moment we talked about interceptions in our Turks of the Week segment about quarterbacks responding to interceptions, Manning went for it all on a deep throw.
That was the one thing I did.
Right, and it wasn't.
They started throwing downfield more.
Yeah, and they'd said before the game that they were going to start trying to expand the offense and get the ball downfield. But he said that's who we are. I'm not sure that is who you are, but nonetheless, it wasn't a terrible throw, and it was a pretty great play.
Yeah.
And the ball got picked, and the DB ended up taking it out of the end zone. He was like 7 yards deep in the end zone, but the shot of Manning, a guy who completely gave up on that play, was a. He couldn't believe the ball got tipped, and let alone an incomplete pass, but it turned into a pick. And from that point on, I think the Giants led 17-14.
Yes.
Then the Seahawks just completely manhandled them the rest of the game.
It was 17-14, and then I made coffee, and then it was 38-17.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you have to defend Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, beast mode for 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He was terrific. And if the Giants don't get it together, and they're unlikely to, it's almost impossible given the state of things to make the playoffs at this point.
Especially in that division.
Even 10-6 might not do it.
I loved all the gifs of the Giants players trying to tackle Marshawn Lynch, and then they were like, I don't know if I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
The last touchdown that he scored on, or maybe the second, whatever one put that game over, because I also had the under in that game, but that one wasn't close, was a 3rd and 3, and the extent to which the Giants had no interest in tackling Lynch was remarkable, because they're going to give the ball to him because they want the clock to go, and the fact is, and if they get 2.5 yards, they'll probably go for it on 4th down.
Yeah.
But I mean, he didn't get touched.
Well, if I'm
on a 3rd and 3 from outside the 20.
If I'm a player and we're losing and I have to tackle Lynch, I'm thinking about the rest of my career and the rest of
your life.
the rest of my life, and I don't want to die.
But what's amazing in that game is that when that was the touchdown that put it over, because it was at that point 21-17 Seahawks. And what we have to talk about, if we're going to even mention that game, is Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch fumbling during that drive, and each fumble, boom, 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 boom. I mean, the fumbles were out there for forever, and guys missing it, and then the one fumble, the Russell Wilson fumble, got kicked back. It was recovered. The play was over. And then all of a sudden, the ball shoots out like 10 yards back down, and the Seahawks.
Like rugby.
So there was a tremendous amount of luck in that for the Seahawks, because both those balls could easily have been recovered by the Giants. And again, that's the kind of play that changes a game. But that drive then ends right after Lynch fumbles on 3rd and 3, with the Giants just like they thought, oh, we've lost the 2 straight chances to get the ball back. We didn't, and then Lynch just walks into the end zone and the game was over. So, all right, good call on the Giants. Your jerk of the week.
Okay, so I'm picking Antonio Brown and the Steelers in general. I mean, that was a guy that everybody was telling me you need to pick up this week for fantasy. Thank goodness I didn't listen to my friends, because out of the four fumbles they had and miscues, he was responsible for 2 of them.
Yeah.
So that was just not acceptable, I don't think, especially against a Jets team. I mean, you have Michael Vick, who is scoring, I think he rushed for 6,000 yards now, so he set his personal record, and it just was brutal. How do you lose to the Jets, like you said?
Well, you lose to the Jets because it's the NFL and we're on the road, and the Jets, the Jets, they're bad, but their turnover differential this year was minus 15 coming into the game. Obviously, that's some bad quarterback play, and Geno Smith has a role in that. That's also some bad luck. Right. And the Jets should not have been a 1-8 team. They probably, if they were reasonably responsible with the ball, they were a 3-6 team. And a 3-6 team beating a 6-3 team in the 3-6 teams building. Hey, that happens. Happens all the time. So I don't think it was that big a deal. And it reminds me of a segment that I want to do. We may have to carve this out here, but this is when coaches play in London. Yeah. They should always have to do the halftime interview in a British accent. That should be, and although the Steelers game wasn't in London, right? This struck me because we'd been watching the Cowboys and the Jaguars. Then I saw Tomlin's halftime interview, and I was like, oh, I want Mike Tomlin to be the first guy to do this. Because he said, he mentions the stat I just brought up. He said that, hey, look, the Jets were minus 15 turnover differential. Now they're plus 3. What do you know? They're ahead 17-3. And if he'd said, oh, my good man, that's such an impertinent question. But, as I mentioned before the game, the keys to this is the transition of the ball from one club to the other club. And my goodness, if the Jets do manage to hang on to the ball as they did here in the first half of the game, well, it would have set an entirely different standard for the outcome of the game. Anyway, cheerio, carry on. And I just think that should be a new rule that would make the London games...
An unspoken rule.
No, I don't want them to codify it. How much more interesting do the London games get if the coaches... Just a halftime interview, that's it.
I feel like Tony Romo alone playing super well kind of made it interesting in itself.
You could give... I could give the jerk of the week easily to... I'd give it to Jason Garrett, but he clearly has no control over who plays or when. I'd give it to Jerry Jones. I mean, you're up 31-7. It's the Jaguars. I got it. In the NFL, teams can score 28 points in a hurry. It's happened. The Jaguars and Blake Bortles were not about to score 28 points on you and win that game. And Romo, in the fourth quarter, took a hit that he should never have taken. And I think, there's one dumb school of thought is, hey, if you're well enough, Michael Irvin said it, if you're well enough to play, then you're well enough to play. And if you got to come out to protect you from an injury, you shouldn't have been playing. Right. That's not a bad concept, but in a specific case like Romo's, where clearly there was an argument that he shouldn't play. Right. It's a back. He broke his back. Right? So he goes out there, he plays. They're up 31-7. Don't let him take a hit. Don't even let him take a step. Back injuries can come on a reaching to hand the ball to DeMarco Murray. Get him out of the game. Let alone he takes a hit, he leaps off. He came back after that before they finally put Brandon Weeden in. So that's just foolishness. That game was in hand at 31-7 and then 31-9. Romo should never have been in there. It makes me... I'm very tempted right now on the spur of the moment to make Jerry Jones the jerk of the week for that play, which is going to work out because they got it. His injury is apparently not that much more serious, and they have a bye week.
Well, it shows how little faith they have in Brandon Weeden, too.
I don't think it has anything to do with Brandon Weeden. You make a decision at that point they'll stack 8 guys on the line, and I'm going to give the ball to DeMarco Murray and Joseph Randle for the rest of the game. Yeah. And if we go 3 and out, we'll get a first down. And if he has to throw a 4-yard completion, maybe we'll tell him not to make any mistakes. But it's the fourth quarter. You're up 31-7, and then later 31-9 after the safety. It's done. You can hurt your back stretching on a handoff. It's foolishness. It's really tight right now for jerk of the week. I think it might. I can't do it because I want to mention the team that gave up 50 points 2 straight games. Who was the last team to give up 50 points 2 straight games?
The Bears?
Nope.
The Lions?
Nope. Anything? Quickly.
Let me think about
television.
this. Somebody that we wouldn't expect.
Somebody that you wouldn't expect. Your time has expired.
Insert Jeopardy music.
Right. So here
Giants.
The Giants. No. No.
damn it.
But how would that be? So it was 1923, and it was the NFL club in Rochester. And their name was either the Bandits, the Jeffersons, or the Red Wings. Make your choice.
Rochester Bandits.
Rochester Bandits. Nice.
Red Wings.
Red Wings. It's the Rochester Jeffersons. Yes, Dan raising his hand, but the Rochester.
We're on a roll here.
The Rochester Jeffersons gave up 50 points in back-to-back games. It hadn't happened since 1923. That's 91 years. 91 years since a team gave up 50 points in 2 straight games. And a little reminder about just how bad the Bears are. And I'm giving my jerk of the week to Mark Trestman. Not Jay Cutler, because he didn't give up 55 points. He played poorly. But he did come through and throw for fewer than 277.5 yards. So God bless
you.
He can't be my jerk of the week because he came through. By the way, if he completes that last screen pass that bounced off the O-lineman's helmet,
Definitely your jerk of the week.
then he would have gone over in a game that I made the right bet. Like betting against Jay Cutler in that game was the right thing to do, but I still almost lost him. But so you got to give it to Trestman. But the Bears, more than just giving up 50 points in back-to-back weeks, a couple of things about that. They had a bye week.
Yeah.
They gave up 51 points to the Patriots, then had a bye to get things right, and then they give up 55 points to the Packers. In the last 2 games, here's what's more shocking than the 51 and 55, the 106 points they gave up. Halftime scores of those games, 38-7, 42-0. 80-7 at the half of those last 2 games. 80 points in the first half of the last 2 games to 7. That's amazing. That is unbelievable. Then the other stat, which Sunday Night Football brought up, the Bears have been around since 1920, right?
Yeah.
Since George Halas founded them in 1920. In that time, I believe they have given up 50 points in a game 6 times.
33%.
They've given up three times they did it in 312 games, something like that. And then they did it 3 times in 11 games under Mark Trestman.
Well, you know
One
where-
last year and these 2 now.
You know where they didn't do it? Allegedly, they didn't do it in practice that week because the coaches kept saying, "Oh, well, we looked phenomenal in practice." I'm like, "What were you practicing then?"
That's
To be in the film room watching the tape of that from before the bye and then after the bye and just going, it looks like we did exactly the same thing 2 weeks ago.
I have not gotten any sense ever that Mark Trestman is the right guy to, he can run an offense, but to lead a team, the clock management, the timeout issues have been atrocious when they mattered in close games. Just atrocious, no sense of it. That said, I am a believer now in this, Jerry Jones philosophy. Like, Jerry Jones deserves some credit for not firing his coach. And these are hard jobs, and maybe it's true. I got an email from Cenk last night, Cenk, who's been ripping on Jim Caldwell forever, and he said not only was he wrong in picking the Lions under this year, under 8.5 wins or 7.5, I can't even remember what it was. Either way, they're going to go over. He said he was wrong about Jim Caldwell. He said, like Ron Rivera, he grew, he learned. And Cenk is given to wildly profound overstatements. Frequently they might work in politics. They don't always work in sports. I don't know that these guys, I don't know that he was right or completely wrong about Rivera and Caldwell the first time, except what's definitely true is that it's a really hard job to be an NFL coach. And it is entirely possible that in your 4th season, you maybe start to figure it out and you learn things that you didn't know. People grow into jobs. Go look at Cenk hosting. I mean, I'll keep using an example of the guy who's not here. Look at him hosting in the beginning. Yeah. Look at him hosting now. Nobody fired him. 13 years later, he's pretty good at it. So, anyway, so I bring that up, but that said, I still have to go with Mark Trestman, and I don't think that they can possibly let him keep that job because there's a degree of incompetence to them. And then we mentioned Cutler. Let's just talk about him very briefly. Because his numbers, 272 yards, like 23 or 37, something like that. Completed a bunch of passes. Again, he didn't give up all those points. But he did look bad, and he looked, again, and I hate to get into this. We used to get into this with Rick Strom. I don't know what's in people's minds, right? I don't know what's in people's heads. I can't read their souls. It still strikes me on the bench as a guy who doesn't care. He gave one shake of the head after that last pick to make it 55-7. But he just looks like, I would rather we won, as opposed to what makes a professional athlete different than guys like you and me is this passion, that they take this too seriously. right? Peyton Manning takes it too seriously. He works all the time. Tom Brady takes it too seriously. Russell Wilson takes it too seriously, right?
So you want Cutler to look a little more like Des Bryant on the sidelines?
I want him to look 2% of Des Bryant.
Yeah, it doesn't have to even be that crazy. Just like show some kind of emotion when you're playing the game. And it's not like Jay Cutler doesn't have 4 amazing offensive weapons and Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Matt Forte, and Martellus Bennett. Maybe amazing is a little bit of an exaggeration, but there are quarterbacks that would die to have one of those 4 players. And Blake Bortles would do anything to have a Brandon Marshall on his team right now.
Well, I thought that was the only bright spot in the game was Brandon Marshall. He had his first over 40-yard reception of the season, and I didn't think he looked bad at all. But everybody else on that team.
I mean, the drop pass. Bennett dropped so many passes.
Yeah.
Everybody dropped passes, and the ball's bouncing off the heads, and the
head fumble.
and the kick returner. He had a nice game.
Eddie Vedder, lead singer of Pearl Jam, met Aaron Rodgers at a show about 2 weeks ago, and Eddie Vedder pleaded to him to bring Aaron Rodgers to Chicago. Eddie Vedder being a big-time Chicago Bears fan.
Well, that's why the Green Bay Packers brought in Aaron Rodgers was to beat the Bears. And let's see, I think
1-11.
Yeah.
1-11, 22 interceptions in his career against the Pack.
For Cutler?
For Cutler.
Yeah, he was bad. He was bad. But those stats, when you have put yourself in the company of no other team but the Rochester Jeffersons, you have seriously fucked up.